Coming up on iOS today, Rosemary, Orchard, and I have a special guest because we are going all in on shortcuts. So what does that mean? Of course, it means Matthew Cassinelli joining us. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This episode of iOS Today is brought to you by Trade Coffee. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/iOS Today. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz and let Trade find you a coffee you'll love. And by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV has everything you need to level up your IT skills while you enjoy the journey. Visit itpro.tv/twit for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use code TWIT30 at checkout. And by Wealthfront. To start building your wealth and get your first $5,000 managed for free for life, go to wealthfront.com/iOS today. Hey, hello, and welcome to iOS Today. This is the show where we talk all things iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePod OS. Look, it's all the OSs that Apple has on offer. We talk about them here on iOS Today, and sometimes we talk about the features built into these operating systems. I am one of your hosts, Mikah, Sargent.
And I am Rosemary Orchard.
Hello, Rosemary. How are you today?
I'm excited. I mean, I know we have Shortcuts Corner every week, but, sometimes it's just fun to dive a bit more in there and have some fun and, get somebody else on the show who also loves shortcuts. So all three of us can really nerd out.
Yes, indeed. Get someone else on the show. Joining us today for iOS Today is Matthew Cassinelli.
Hello.
Whoa,
hello.
That was a great video effect. Hi, Matthew. How are you today?
Totally. I'm doing excellent. I suppose I fit the qualifier of someone who likes shortcuts. So
sorry. It basically in my head, anytime shortcuts comes up, it's like the two of you ring in my head at the same time. So I am really excited to kind of be here as a little bit more of the audience member as we kind of break into things. The first thing we should talk about is a recent announcement that you made. You made it this month. Tell us what is going on with your shortcuts library.
Sure. I'd be happy to share because I have spent like 9 months working on my mega collection of shortcuts. It's over 600 now, which is ridiculous. It's also not nearly as many as I have. So I have a lot more coming too. But basically, I revamped my whole system from... I've had a couple of versions of the shortcuts. The whole thing is called the catalog now because I include the action directory where I document all of the actions in shortcuts and the descriptions and things like that because that was never available online. But I've had versions of my shortcuts out where you could get hundreds of shortcuts, and then I tried to simplify it into just like 50 shortcuts that pretty much did all of those same things, but underneath menus so that it was just a little bit easier to use. And then I kind of went back from that over the last year to single shortcuts. Plus, I have a new method of actually automating shortcuts itself to take a folder of shortcuts and turn it into one single shortcut. So I kind of have both versions of my shortcuts library from the past now together going forward into the future. So it's a lot of fun and lots of shortcuts. I worked on the gallery at Workflow, and that's now in the Shortcuts app. And so this is essentially my own gallery that you can look through and get any type of shortcuts from those categories that we were just showing on screen. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great resource so that if somebody is looking for something and they're like, oh, I wonder if I can do this with a shortcut or that with a shortcut. This is one of the places I recommend people go to look because there are so many examples. And even if it's not exactly what somebody's looking for, maybe somebody's thinking, oh, I've got a question. I'm sure nobody's answered it. if you're watching this show, you are smart enough to solve your problem, and, steal from the good examples that are there as well, because there are so many great examples. If you're looking for travel stuff or just looking for inspiration of what you can do with shortcuts, it's good fun to go and look through. I'm really pleased that you've put this all together, Matthew. Like you, I've got too many shortcuts and I've got no documentation on mine. So I'm really pleased that you managed to put yours together.
Thanks. I'm glad you like it. That's kind of the goal, is there's so many ways you can use shortcuts, and I use almost all of it. Like, I use all of these shortcuts. These are actually my shortcuts too. And so I just wanted to give people a lot of examples to get started with, because there's just tons. And even me, like, writing up and making videos about all these would just take like years. And so to put it all out and just let people get at it first, and then I'm going to go back through half of this or like write up what I've done so far, plus build new stuff going forward. So I'm super excited, because it is like, people are just like, oh, how do you do this? And I'm like, oh, I can just link to it on my website right away. I don't have to go share the shortcut and find it for people.
Yeah. And as a bonus, there's some screenshots and everything there, or whatever it is related to that shortcut, which is just, totally. a great way of getting started. So, yeah.
I've made many descriptions. It's like a whole book just in the descriptions of the shortcuts. So you should be able to learn from that, and then look at the shortcut, which includes the descriptions as well. So you can see it later and kind of learn and build yourself if you want to make your own version.
Cool. Now, what I think that something that could be kind of interesting is hearing kind of a day in the life, because I think one of the things that has always made me not skeptical. I'm not skeptical of shortcuts, because I do use shortcuts regularly. In fact, there's kind of a fun one that we'll talk about here in a little bit that I use, that Rosemary helped me get figured out, actually using an API and everything. Nice. But so there are shortcuts that I use. I don't use a whole lot. And I think that the folks who listen to this show in particular are the ones who are not necessarily, in many cases, the power users, the folks who are really digging in super deep. And so I'm kind of curious if you could, they might look at this library and go, okay, this is a huge, or the full catalog and look at it and go, this is a huge amount of shortcuts, but which ones are people actually using regularly? So can you tell us kind of, you wake up in the morning and you press the icon on your iPhone. How does day to day it look with you using the shortcuts that you mentioned?
Sure, totally. And I think that's super fair. I think that's like the fundamental problem that I have with releasing so many is people are like, I just want a couple. But in theory, there are a couple in there that you could just use, and you don't have to get all of them. And I'm very maximalist in my approach, I'll say, where if something can be done with shortcuts, I will make a shortcut for it and try to use that instead of doing it the main way. So I don't always, don't expect people to match my behavior, because part of it is I'm building so many of these that I just have them, and I need to create new methods of using them. But one of the biggest ways I actually take advantage of most of my shortcuts is through focus modes and the home screens on the iPad and iPhone, because they can show me the shortcuts widget contextually when I need it and hide it when I don't need it. So I actually I think I have 200 or more instances of the shortcuts widget. There's got to be more, because anytime I can place a widget, I turn it into a stack of 10 versions of the shortcuts widget. So because I have 100 shortcuts for the music app, I have a music stack with 10 pages of shortcuts on it, and I just flip through it. So even though it's kind of ridiculous, it actually works very, very well. And the main issue is just taking the time to set it up. But at that point, I don't need these shortcuts most of the time. If I'm working and I'm in my work focus mode, all of my personal shortcuts are totally hidden from me, and I don't see them at all. And then if I'm doing a podcast or something, I have a podcasting mode. So I, of course, use focus modes excessively, but I just have a podcasting mode that then just shows me the one screen with only the podcasting shortcuts and a stack of widgets showing me those. And so that's been my main way of it's totally fair. I have the criticism like in my head of like actually using shortcuts, quote unquote, because the biggest thing is you can make these all day. When are you going to use them is the big question for most people. So I think, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so you said, you switch home screens with focus modes, which we'll show people how to do in a moment. But do you also use the changing of focus modes to automatically run shortcuts? Because that's one of the things I do in the morning. When my sleep mode turns off, that runs one shortcut. When my work focus mode turns on, that runs another shortcut, and so on. Just, getting, like, for example, a list of things that I might need to do together so that I'm prompted of that, so that I remember, oh, right, actually before my daily stand-up meeting, these were the things that I planned that I wanted to accomplish, and just getting a reminder, actually actively sent to me, instead of relying on me to unlock my phone and open the widget and look at it and go, oh yeah, these are the things. I found that, I can fix my personal failings a little bit with some shortcuts. Are you doing anything similar to that?
I'm doing a bit, although not as much as I want, and probably only because I just haven't had time to do it yet. Like, I had so many bugs too I had so many bugs that a lot of this stuff I was trying to use more, but I basically couldn't. So that's actually been like since automations just got the ability to hide their notification also, so that you can turn off the show and run option, I believe it's what it's called in shortcuts now for any automation. That I was like, okay, now automations are real. It was kind of, I don't know. It's like my joking way of like, to the degree that I would want to use them, it would get in my way with the notifications. So this was like built for me to be able to use it, because I want to have like open the app, close the app, do all these things. For the main one that I am using though is to change my watch face. So just go even more with the home screen thing is anytime my home screens change, my watch also changes to a different face. And did you know that you can have like 40 watch faces or more? Wow.
Yeah, my biggest problem with the watch faces is when you try and change them in the shortcuts app, you don't know which one is which. I'm just going to go back to, because you mentioned the notifications. This is something that you can turn off, and it's only for the shortcuts that can run, or the automations in shortcuts that can run entirely automatically. So there's this edit automation screen. There's a very similar screen at the end of creating an automation where you can turn off ask before running. And if you turn that off, then you see this notify when run option, which I should note defaults to off. Kudos to Apple there for doing that, because that's something that annoys me. But I have to say, my biggest frustration with the Apple Watch stuff and the shortcuts is if I wanted to set a watch face, and now I can't see the option to set my watch face. There it is. Yeah, penultimate one. Yeah. So I tap it, and then it gives me in a moment, hopefully, a list of options: X large, infragraph modular, breathe, fire and water, numerals duo, X large. And I have no idea which one is which, so I have to go back to the shortcuts app to check which one it is for that, which is kind of frustrating, especially if you then rearrange your shortcuts later. I've created mini shortcuts, Matthew. I'm guessing this is something you've done, right? Where you create mini shortcuts.
This is where my maximalist approach benefits me, is because I made a folder of single shortcuts that just set the watch face, and I named it just set podcasting face, and then I just run that shortcut from the automation. So
so it's sort of buried inside it references ones that you've created, so once you do it one time, then you've got it figured out. That makes sense.
Totally. Part of the whole new thing that I did do with the catalog, and one of the reasons that very widespread approach works, is if I made 40 shortcuts just to run my watch faces, I have that thing that I built. So Federico Vitici figured out the whole, on the Mac, you can sign shortcuts now that you've created from scratch or our older ones. But it basically means that shortcuts users can generate their own shortcut files and then make them approved by Apple that they're associated with my actual account, and then I can use those. And so he developed this method that's he called I think it's just the injector, to like make a shortcut yourself. And I took that and realized, okay, I have all these shortcuts and they're files that I can get in the app. I want to turn all of those shortcuts into one shortcut that just is a menu that runs all of my watch faces, for example. And so I actually looked in at the code and designed my own, I'm calling it a compiler because it's actually software development at that point. It takes all of those individual set watch face shortcuts and puts them into a separate shortcut underneath menu options that says like podcasting face, work face, and stuff like that. And so I can take this bundle that I make of too many shortcuts and turn it into just one shortcut that I can give to people and they can use that. Like you'd have to set up with your own watch faces, for example, but that's the way that I'm also using this, is kind of test these different methods, building out a whole block of shortcuts, and then just simplify it into one and hand it off to people too, which is a fun experiment.
Yes, that is good fun. And for people who at home who are going, oh, like if I go ahead and organize all my shortcuts into folders, is there a way that I can like quickly just choose from one of them? So if I want to choose my watch face, how could I do that? There is a way that you can do this without having to, get your Mac out and stuff. Use the get shortcuts action and change it to get shortcuts for a folder. So I've got my widgets folder here because I've got several widgets that I run, and then added choose from list action. And then there's a run action. And I'll put a copy of this one in the show notes for folks so that you can choose from shortcuts in a folder to run, because that's easier way of doing it for everybody at home.
Totally.
And then you can download Matthew's shortcut to actually, see the end result of the amazing work that he's done there.
That's pretty much what I did originally, but I couldn't share those with people without it not being helpful, because they'd just have to go set it up themselves. So that's like,
they don't have
that's exactly what it's doing, but it literally compiles the shortcut into one in the entire folder, which is, I'm sorry, I'm so proud of this that I'm just telling you, Rosemary, because I feel like this is something that you'll love.
Yes,
I'm over
it's
here
one of
reading
those
about
things. I very much get it.
I'm over here reading about signing shortcuts from the command line. So don't mind me, I'm getting nerdy. But we do need to take a quick break before we come back. Lots more to talk about with Matthew Cassinelli joining us here today. Of course, folks can head to MatthewCassinelli.com. That's CASSINELLI.com to check out the Shortcuts catalog and the Shortcuts library, as well as the opportunity to sign up for a membership, $15 a quarter or $50 a year, and well worth it to get all the best shortcuts, the ones even more than are available in the library. But it's time for a break, and I think I can smell the coffee. That's right, folks. This episode of iOS Today is brought to you by Trade Coffee. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers lots of goodies. So Trade Coffee is this really cool coffee company that says, look, there are loads of different roasters all over the United States, and they are, independent roasters who are making coffee locally. But I, as a coffee drinker, want to be able to try some of these different coffee options that these roasters are making. So Trade Coffee was like, you know what we can do? We can sort of be the network for these different independent roasters and make it so that you can try these coffees. This one came from Cambridge, Massachusetts via Trade. It's called, the place is called Broadsheet Coffee Roasters. And by the way, love the color, love the graphic design for the packaging. This was roasted on April 11th. I believe I got it 2 days after that, April 13th. And it's Finca Buenos Aires, Chalchuapa, El Salvador. And the flavor notes are mandarin, cherry, and panela sugar. So this is kind of a medium roast. And it has these bright pops that kind of go along with it. And goodness, one of my favorite things is just getting a new bag in the mail and opening it up and immediately getting those nice hints of flavor as you give it a sniff. And then what I like to do is, when I first get it, because I tend to make my AeroPress coffee, I tend to do those things. But when I first get a new bag from Trade, the first thing I do is read the tasting notes, and then I brew a small cup and use the spoon to do that traditional coffee tasting method. It's sort of obnoxious, but it's well worth it just so that you can kind of get a hint of it before you start making it as your daily coffee. You kind of got to slurp the coffee off of the spoon, but by doing so, it takes the coffee across your whole tongue. You can kind of taste the different flavors. And so every time I get a new bag, I get to do that. That's so much fun. Again, the taste profile for this one is mandarin, cherry, and vanilla sugar. I'm excited to have a cup of this after iOS today. One of the things that Trade does is they have a quiz that you go through to figure out kind of what your coffee profile is, to try to match your tastes with the coffee that they provide. So, I went through, took the quiz, and one of the questions that they ask you is kind of like, where do you rank kind of along the scale of knowing things about coffee or not knowing things about coffee? And I'm definitely, and I love too that they've got the brew methods. So I was able to choose AeroPress, and then there's the experience level. If you're watching, I'm pretty new to all of this. I'm an intermediate stage. I'm a total coffee nerd. I'm pretty advanced. I think I went with I'm pretty advanced because I always have imposter syndrome in everything I do. And then it asks like, do you add anything to your coffee? So then all of these things help determine what the different coffees they'll recommend to you are. And I love that they always have a why it matters section, because some coffees can stand up to creamers or milks or things like that. Some of them, you won't notice the sort of nuances of the flavor unless you are getting just a straight black coffee. So they can use all of that information to help kind of figure out. And get this, Trade has what's called a first match guarantee. They're so confident that they'll match you right the first time that if they don't, they're going to take your feedback. And get this, I think this is amazing. It almost made me wish that they didn't get me right. They did get me right though. So I wasn't able to do this, but it says an actual coffee expert will work with you to send a brand new bag for free. There's no one perfect coffee, but there is a perfect coffee for you. And Trade's human powered algorithm is going to help you find it. Yes, a human-powered algorithm. So you don't have to worry about this sort of being automated process that doesn't really know what's going on. Trade customers are truly impactful for these independent roasters, often being the largest source of new growth for them. So along with you getting delicious coffees, you are also helping to support these independent roasters. So you get that good feeling every time you open up a new bag as well. Trade Coffee sends you freshly roasted beans from 60 of the country's best craft roasters, small businesses who pay farmers fair prices to sustainably source the greatest beans from around the world. Whether your friends call you a coffee snob, maybe so, or you just know it when coffee tastes really perfect, Trade's real coffee experts personally taste test more than 450 roasts so they know exactly what to recommend for you. Because the truth is, what I like and what you like are going to be different. You'll like a selection of specific coffees that are different from anyone else's tastes. So just answer a couple of questions and you'll get your own personalized variety of coffees delivered fresh to you as often as you like. And folks, no gimmicks. You can turn it off. You can change how often you want it to come, all that kind of stuff. Trade delivers a bag of freshly roasted coffee as whole beans or ground for however you brew it at home. Yes. So when you do this, you can say, I brew my coffee using this method, and so they will grind it to that. A pro tip though, if you want the best tasting coffee and you want to get all the nuance, if you want all the flavors, get it whole bean and then get a conical burr grinder if you don't have one, because that is the best way to make sure that you're getting all of the flavor, all of the nuance in that bean. But again, if you don't have that, you don't want to mess with that, then Trade will help make sure that the grind you get is perfect for the type of coffee that you're brewing. Trade has delivered more than 5 million bags of fresh coffee with more than 750,000 positive reviews. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers, this is the goodie I was talking about earlier, a total of $30 off your first order. And what's the second goodie? Free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/iOS today. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz at drinktrade.com/iOS today and let Trade find you a coffee you'll love. That's drinktrade.com/iOS today for $30 off. Oh, and don't forget, Mother's Day is coming up. A Trade subscription is the perfect gift for the coffee lovers in your life. Thank you, Trade, for sponsoring this week's episode of iOS Today. Thank you for this delicious bag of coffee. Look on the bottom there, it says, enjoy. And I am enjoying this coffee from Broadsheet Coffee Roasters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. All right, folks, back to the show. We've got Matthew Cassinelli here with us today to talk all things shortcuts. And Rosemary is also providing, I love, as Matthew's kind of talking about different things, and Rosemary's been providing some tutorials to go along with it. So let's bounce back into things. I want to ask you, Matthew, what was... So I know you get excited about any kind of shortcuts announcement or a new thing, but what I would really like to know is kind of the in the past, maybe, I don't know, 3 years, what has been kind of a thing that you discovered you could do with shortcuts, or a thing that Apple announced was coming to shortcuts, or something that really was just like, oh, I'm so excited. What really blew you away?
I'm going to have to say shortcuts for Mac, just to be straightforward. I don't know what my head was at, but I didn't think that we were getting it when we did. Maybe, to be fair, maybe it should have waited till this year to be a little more stable or something with just how Swift UI is performing. But I still think it's been amazing. And even just some of the workflow of working on the Mac has been really nice. I think I've always been an iPad person because of, well, the app workflow, not just the process of getting things done, but now that it's on the Mac as shortcuts, I'm like, oh yeah, I should use the Mac more. And so I've kind of come back to the Mac a lot more than I was in the past. And it's been great. I've always used the Mac as well. Like I tried pretty hard not to say that I was iPad only, because I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I used Final Cut, and doing things like managing the Airtable that I use to make this shortcuts catalog is just doing 10,000 pieces of data entry is a lot better on a Mac than an iPad, even just because of the way the apps are built. Bringing it to Mac has been huge, just because it can take advantage of some of the functionality that Mac can. And even one thing I did with the shortcuts catalog was I realized that you can, if you run a shortcut using a keyboard shortcut, you can run it multiple times in a row, and shortcuts will execute each of them in the background separately. Whereas on iPad, you can only run a shortcut and wait for it to finish and then run it again. And so I have a shortcut that scrapes out my library and uploads it to my Airtable folder by folder. And so I could run like 15 folders logging to Airtable in the background all at the same time. And it literally took a task that would take me 8 hours, and I could get it done in one. And so I've seen some just huge gains of some of this is just like functioning the way it should, but I was working so manually before that now I can just kind of power through it. So that's been super fun. And even just on the Mac in general, a lot of the limitations of just how iPadOS works are not there with the Mac. So I can use other existing automation or scripting tools on the Mac via shortcuts and do things that I've always wanted to do, like open a website and click on a certain spot or something like that. You just can't do that on iPad because there's no technology for it, but I can use AppleScript to point at a specific spot on the page. So
that's
I never thought
cool,
that I would be getting back into AppleScript now, but it's actually one thing that I'm just Googling and finding people who have solutions and then turning that into a shortcut. And it's awesome.
I think that's how most people
that.
AppleScript, to be honest. AppleScript's a lovely language, but equally, I don't know many people who actually write it. Nearly everybody I know copies and pastes bits from the internet and sticks it together until it works, or uses Keyboard Maestro click it image.
And in theory, over the next couple of years, shortcuts will be able to just do those same commands via native actions. But at least right now, it really is like I'm having a lot of fun just simulating other keyboard shortcuts to like press globe F to maximize the window and stuff like that. So I can open up YouTube in the Chrome app and then maximize it and just like immediately start watching a video. So like I've turned my Mac into like a TV screen when I'm using my iPad in front of it, and like universal control stuff with all that has been awesome. So
yeah,
I feel like iPad really hit its stride with shortcuts in iOS 15 and the focus modes thing. And then also now I can use it perfectly alongside my Mac, which is great. And so I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds, which is
Play
nice.
Miley Cyrus. So I agree. In fact, I have used shortcuts more now that it is on the Mac than I have ever before in terms of creating shortcuts. Because for me, there's something about the ability to move a cursor around on the screen and feel like I have more room. I just like having more room. And so the drag and drop thing just doesn't feel, it feels constrained for me. And so I have really enjoyed being able to kind of dig in with shortcuts a little bit more and feel like copy and paste and all of that are all very easy to do. So that also made me very happy. But even when they first announced it, I didn't know that it was going to have such an impact that it ended up having. So I was very happy with it coming to the Mac as well.
I think there's still a lot more to be seen with it too. Like it's not, part of what took me so long with my catalog was that I had to just relearn what it even means to use it from the Mac, especially because my home screen and widget thing doesn't apply at all on the Mac. I'm not gonna lie, I have a Stream Deck that's totally filled out with pages on pages of shortcuts now. But that's also not realistic for a regular person as well. So I think I am sort of struggling with the part of I'm this ridiculous like workflow guy, and now shortcuts for Mac is a different beast entirely. But things like the menu bar and I have another method that I'm trying to automate your ability to add the shortcut as a dot application. So it's actually like making your own app. If you right click and add a shortcut to the dock, it actually turns it into an application in like a little bundle. And I'm basically trying to get like 400 of those into a bunch of different folders that then I can just like preview and look through and click real quick. But I mean, yeah, you can like right click on the shortcuts icon and run any of your shortcuts just from that through like the folders and stuff like that. So they've thought about a lot of different ways, but it is just still fundamentally, I think keyboard shortcuts actually are one of the best opportunities just because it's always there. But then I'm like mapping mentally like 10,000 keyboard shortcuts in my head or something like that. So I only have like 10 that I use from there.
Have there been? Oh, go ahead, Rosemary.
No, I was going to say, Mikey, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I did. So I'm curious the last time that you were either talking to somebody or, texting with somebody, or it doesn't matter, but you were talking to them and they had a problem or they had a solution or that they needed. And so you said, oh, you can do that with shortcuts. You gave them the answer, or maybe you even just shared it on Twitter. I'm curious kind of the last time that somebody's eyes lit up or sort of digitally lit up where they were excited about a shortcut that you had that could help them with something. I think those are kind of feel good, fun moments where you are able to solve somebody's problem and where everybody's just kind of giddy together.
I feel like, I mean, the most recent, I just did another podcast too, and like automating the ability to share about your new episode and stuff. Even I did it for Smart Tech Today with you, Mikah, for a while, but I like my process slowly fell apart while I was working on the catalog. But being able to like take a new episode and grab even the podcast player, embed code for your podcast and like put it on your website and things like that. I was doing that for Stephen Robles of Apple Insider, because it's like every time you post a new episode, you have to share it in so many places in a specific way and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so if you have RSS feeds, there's a lot of cool opportunity just to make like templates for all of your stuff and even fill out your templates in a way that isn't so templatized as it can tend to be. But I think what's hard is I get so into the creative mode for people that I'm like helping very specific creator stuff. I mean, I love just meal planning. I have a shortcut to help me with that because I hate doing it. And it's one of those things where you're like, I have to do this again. I swear I just ate the other day. But like,
it's like laundry.
making a process.
You do laundry and you immediately realize you're wearing clothes, therefore generating more laundry. It's
totally.
terrible.
I think one thing that's true about my shortcuts library was I did go super wide and not as like crazy deep I did in some specific places, but just to go super deep and wide would take a lot more time as well. So I have been trying to solve a lot of simple problems for people. I know one that, I can just say my own favorite set of shortcuts that I've been using lately are something that they added in iOS 15.4 is the set playback destination action now has parameters to let you add or remove speakers from a speaker group on the fly from the control center options. Yeah. So this is like, nobody knows that this is a thing now, and you can just do it with shortcuts. I have a shortcut where I just add all of the rooms in my house to this speaker thing, and then it's just music is playing everywhere. Or it's like just my office and my bedroom that are upstairs because I want to listen to music while I'm like getting ready for the day or something like that. And so on the fly speaker groups from HomePods has just never been possible before, and Apple just kind of like snuck it into shortcuts. So I love it. I'm like walking around the house, and then like this music stops in here once I leave the room and then get to the other one, and it feels, I got to get the whole NFC set up too, so it's just like seamless moving around and
right,
putting on my speakers
and detecting which room you're in. That'll be the tricky bit. I struggle with that in home automation a bit.
I feel like
I'm mostly there.
I'm so curious. We're in that zone where we have all of iOS 15 and iOS 16 is just around the corner. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, that would be very cool if they could, I don't know, like shortcuts for Mac, I think has been hard because there's not like tons of apps immediately supporting it, or it's not clear just like, how do I use this on a daily basis to get all my stuff done? But I think they've set the groundwork now, and they could add in more where suddenly you're able to do a ton more because they make it like there's no automations on the Mac. And so if they could make your apps and stuff respond to it, to shortcuts triggers more often, like there's a lot of potential that could just explode upwards from here, which is exciting.
Yeah,
that would be nice.
Shortcuts now. As I tend to.
Really. I was curious, Matthew, what do you also think about how shortcuts arriving on the Mac has actually improved it on iOS? So one obvious thing that comes to mind is the fact that shortcuts on iOS can now access all of the folders and all of the data in all of the places, which until it came to the Mac, it couldn't do. And I'm guessing some of this is due to the fact that they couldn't really limit it like that on the Mac. It would have been a very artificial limitation. And considering the fact it's supposed to replace Automator, that would have made it very difficult. But are there any other things that you can think of which are like that? Or is there anything in particular you're looking forward to being improved as shortcut spreads?
To iOS or to the Mac? Which way?
In both directions.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think in general, the cross-platform nature of it means that more apps are going to add actions, including Apple's own apps, that just work across the different platforms, and you can get everything from either situation. Because I think there's a little bit of like a gap in between, or some overlap in one way but not the other right now, and I think that's awkward, but it's also forcing the technology to get adopted on both platforms. Like, I think one of the reasons I didn't think we were going to get shortcuts for Mac is because workflow originally was so iOS based. It's like almost all of it was through the APIs that were available for iPhone and iPad, and none of those were available on Mac. And so I thought it was just, maybe we're still in that middle zone where they just have to literally build those technologies into Mac OS for it to be able to work, or rebuild it from scratch to work best across both. And they never had the reason or the like prompt to do it before. So I do want to see more of that. I think some of the like just overlap does need to get addressed sooner though. Like Safari stuff is a little awkward right now. And even just like that the Mac has a share sheet but doesn't use it. And that's a key way that most people on iOS use shortcuts. or you can, it's just a clearly obvious way to send data from one app to another. And then you kind of have to go through the services menu on the Mac. I think that's awkward.
Yeah.
Just like that. It is, I mean, it's very fascinating being an iPad person coming back to the Mac and seeing the Shortcuts team they did a really good job of adopting those Mac technologies, but like only those and not like bringing it together so that people could kind of move between the platforms more. I think that's kind of some of the realm. I mean, I'd love to see the keyboard shortcuts from the Mac on the iPad. That seems like, I don't know why we didn't get that this year if it's possible. I mean, it's just sort of the like mental model for using the iPad doesn't really fit with that. But I think, I mean, even what I was saying, decoupling shortcuts from physically running in the app and being able to trigger them from a keyboard shortcut when you're not in Shortcuts app, but also from other apps is an important thing. On the Mac, you can run an Apple script that calls a shortcut and runs it in the background from any app. And on the iPad, you have to physically open shortcuts and trigger the shortcut. Like something like Drafts can't take advantage of it on iOS, but they can on the Mac right now. And just bringing that out and making it work super well would be great.
Yeah.
I'd just like to see a little more clarity from Apple on how you're supposed to use shortcuts for Mac, even with like things like Siri, because it seems, I don't know, there's like 44 ways to run a shortcut across both platforms. Or it's probably even like 50 now. And so there is just like, this is the fundamental problem of someone like me of like, I want to make every option in every way that you possibly can. And so it's like, how does everybody take advantage of that? It's like, well, just do it all. Like there's so much that getting your specific thing, like some of my most valuable shortcuts are just ones that I only use and only really make sense to me. And I, like I was saying, logging my database, and I'll run it 100 times and it'll save me hundreds of thousands of hours or whatever. Like there's no way I could publish this without automating it. But also to somebody else, that's just like not relevant. And Shortcuts taps into so many different places. So I think I do just want to see more examples in the gallery and more app actions from Apple's apps to get third-party apps into it, and just sort of, there's so much potential. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only person shouting about it over here. So just like seeing more from those spaces would be helpful, just because other people need to get into this. And I think just like making that easier to get past the learning curve and into the deeper area is probably the biggest opportunity.
Yeah. So we've got obviously a lot of listeners who write into us, and there's always people going, and what is the best way to do this? And the answer is there isn't a best way, because it very much depends on your workflow. But I think having more from Apple examples would be really helpful there. So for example, if I want to run a shortcut on a file on iOS and macOS, what is their recommended method for doing that? Obviously, I can figure it out myself, but to somebody who's brand new to this and who wants to be able to pick a file and have that automatically emailed to these 3 email addresses where it needs to go, and they need to do that on a regular basis, what is the best way to do that? Should they go to the file, share the file into the shortcut? Should they start in the shortcut and have the shortcut scoped to a certain folder, or do they just have to poke around and find the file eventually? Totally. What is the best way to do that? And also, to an extent, it would be nice to be able to get more data out of things. So they recently added more functionality to the Reminders app so that you can edit a reminder, but you still can't do things like get a list of your most recently received email or unread emails and things like that to be able to, consolidate that together. I know there's a lot of our listeners who've got various accessibility requirements, and some of them have been asking, how can I use shortcuts to help me with this? And there's a lot of things you can do with backtap and so on, but really being able to help people by building shortcuts that go, okay, so these are the 5 pieces of information you want in the morning. Great. We're going to have this so that when you say this command to Siri, then it's going to come back and it's going to tell you your unread emails and what's on your calendar, and so on and so forth, and just consolidate that all together instead of making them open all the different apps and go through all the different things, or run 3 or 4 different shortcuts to do it. You know, it would be nice to be able to do that sort of thing. And it would be great if Apple, you know, have the ability to add some more focus on things like that as well, which would be great.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's a session at WWDC that they just did last year that was, here's how you should build actions for shortcuts. And it was talking about like getting data out and creating new data and updating it and just having an instance of that file itself and things like that. And I sort of suspect that it's one of those things where until the team shared that, they didn't actually have a final process, even internally, for how to actually build a good set of shortcuts, because it's confusing that this is a brand new thing that never existed before. And people like you and me, Rosemary, have been doing it for 7 years, longer than the app even literally has existed technically, because it was with workflow. So part of it is just like we're developing a programming community, and some of these things are things that programmers have huge discussions on and try to figure out and create these methodologies that aren't always so obvious. And even like, I'll just be clear, like I worked there and then I don't work there anymore. And so this is the thing that I would have been probably doing internally. And so like, I'm not even sure who, like, I don't know. I don't want to like comment on them, but it's part of it is like, let's talk about that, Rosemary, and decide for people what's the best solutions, because ultimately shortcuts is also always going to be built by, or like what shortcuts is built by people like us and people who get into this, and giving Apple feedback to and sharing it goes a long way because they want to improve this and they listen. It's sometimes we have to be like, hey, this is pretty broken on the Mac to get them to fix it, but it's still, I think it's just kind of part of programming as well that seems like it should be more clear, but it's a whole new paradigm really. Like I talked to Matthew Bischoff, and their advice was really helpful because they're an engineer, and what I'm doing with my shortcuts library is making well-factored shortcuts that do one thing well, and you know what it does, and it always works reliably, but I have just done it at scale. It's like I have my own app store basically for these shortcuts. And so my goal is to go a lot deeper and develop these methodologies. Here's the best way to do it, or here's all of the ways you can do it, and then sort of pick for yourself sort of whatever works, because that's the realm that I operate in. Is I know that all of this is available, and if there's a problem that I haven't solved yet, I can make a shortcut, and often under half an hour. I mean, it depends on how complex it is. Obviously, if I get into deeper stuff, it can take me longer, but it's pretty quick. And one of the weird things is when you just solve your problems and you're done. Like I actually have run into that a little bit where I was just like, I felt like I should be more stressed out, but I actually did all the stuff I needed to do and it didn't take as much time. And I was like, this isn't right. Like I'm not used to this situation. So I just want to like get other people into that realm, because even still me dropping hundreds of shortcuts isn't teaching you how to use shortcuts. It's making the functionality available to people so they can just use it. But that's still the goal, is to do shows like this and just work. I'm claiming your time now that you should come on my live stream, and I want to build shortcuts with you, because that's where the most fun is. And just like sharing the process of how we think about it, that's where I could build all of these shortcuts differently depending on the context and what people need.
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of building shortcuts, Mikah, I recently helped you build a shortcut, and I was wondering if you would want to share that, and then Matthew can, maybe provide some commentary on it as well, sure. Because I know I did a little bit of digging to help you figure out, where we needed to go on this, but I didn't really investigate it all that much because I just knew Slack's got an API, I think we can solve your problem with this, but I don't know if you're able to share the shortcut. Yeah. Hopefully the API token is hidden so that people won't see that. In your shortcut.
We can take a look at that, but I do want to take a quick break first, and then we will address that, and then we'll head into, we'll talk about the shortcut, and then we'll go into feedback and questions and the rest of the show. I want to tell you about IT Pro TV. If you haven't heard about them, then you clearly haven't been watching TWiT, because IT Pro TV has been a sponsor for TWiT for such a long time. And today they're bringing you this episode of iOS Today. The world of IT, look, it's colossal and it's always changing all the time. Where do you start to get the updated certs and training you need? Whether you're a seasoned IT professional or you're just getting started, IT Pro TV is the online learning IT education platform you need to advance your skills in IT. IT Pro TV has 7 studios and they film Monday through Friday. They have the most up-to-date content with every vendor and skill that you need to advance your IT career. Their courses go from the studio to their course library in 24 hours and are divided into 20 to 30-minute episodes for easy binging. And they make sure you're prepared for your exams with their virtual labs and practice tests. The best part about IT Pro TV is that you can learn and get certified on your own schedule, and you can count on it always being entertaining. April is Linux month at IT Pro TV. Leo just shouted, hurrah! Check out the on-demand webinar with Don Pizzette and Daniel Lowry focused on choosing the right Linux distro in 2022. Man, there are always new Linux distros to check out. So finding the right one is important. IT Pro TV has more than 138 hours of Linux training available. And here are a couple of courses you may want to check out. There's Linux Shell Scripting Basics. There's LPIC2 Linux Engineer or Linux Command Line, plus so many more. Don't forget about your IT team also. Check out an IT Pro TV business plan for your team today. Visit itpro.tv/twit for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use the code TWIT30. That's itpro.tv/twit and use code TWIT30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. Thanks so much to IT Pro TV for sponsoring this week's episode of iOS Today. All right, so I'll start by saying this. Rosemary taught me something very important not too terribly long ago. And I believe it's called, correct me if I'm wrong, Rosemary, is it the XY problem?
Yes. Yeah, it's called the XY problem. And basically the idea is when you're solving a problem, you need to keep in mind what your actual end destination is. So, for example, if a problem that you're trying to solve is to automatically close your curtains at night, you don't want to get hung up on, so I'm going to be using this particular solution, but they don't have a HomeKit plugin, so I'm going to need to use HomeBridge or Home Assistant or talk to the API. So I'm going to talk to the API, and you get stuck on the talking to the API, and you forget that your end solution is to actually close the curtains at night, or that's your end goal. And so you need to keep that in mind when trying to solve your problem, because otherwise you can get stuck in very weird and unhelpful to you places. That's the idea behind it anyway.
Yes. And I think that it works doubly for those of us who are providing assistance to other people, or in my case, asking assistance. Because when people come to me asking me for something, oftentimes they'll sort of obscure the problem that they're having. They'll give an example of the problem instead of just saying what the problem is itself, right? And so in the past, when I was asking Rosemary for help, I was doing that. I was giving an example of a thing I was trying to do instead of just saying the exact thing I was trying to do. So this time when I went to Rosemary, I was like, look, I'm just going to tell you exactly what I'm dealing with. I know it's going to take a minute, but if I do so, I think we're going to get to the answer a little bit easier. So I'll tell all of you. We have, of course, these different shows that we do on the network. iOS Today is one example. And these shows are recorded and then they're edited by the editor. In this case, it's the wonderful Anthony Nielsen, who is also our technical director. And after it's edited and looked over and all that kind of stuff, it gets published online. And it gets published in 4 places. It gets published as a publicly available audio feed, a publicly available video feed. It also gets published as a Club TWiT version with no ads. That's an audio version, and a Club TWiT version with no ads. That's a video version. So 4 different feeds.
You're missing 2, but go on.
Oh, okay.
No,
so
it's fine.
Yeah, so there are a lot, basically. Just understand that there are a lot of feeds that go out, a lot of versions that go out. And what we have to do is after those go out, after they're published to the feeds, we need to go and make sure that it was correctly published, that it is actually the show, that kind of thing. Because the last thing you want to hear is someone tweeting at you a couple of days later saying, hey, I was going to listen to iOS today and instead it was Security Now. I don't understand what's going on. That didn't happen. This is just an example. So I, as the producer of MacBreak Weekly, for example, check that to make sure. And then there's a specific place that we go in Slack to say, basically, hey, I've checked all of the feeds. It's gone up on, YouTube was one of the places that I forgot. It's gone up on YouTube and then it's gone up on those feeds. And what I would do in the past is go into Pocket Casts. That's the app that I use to listen to podcasts, and hit play on each one. And you just need to kind of hear the first 30 seconds to make sure that it's the correct episode. Listen to all of those and then go to YouTube, listen to it there. And then I would go into Slack and I would type out, MacBreak Weekly is up across feeds in YouTube. Then what I did was on my Mac, I love the application called Text Expander. So I created a little snippet where all I would have to do is type FC for feed check, and then the code for the show, the short code for the show. So for example, MacBreak Weekly short code is MBW. So I'd type FC MBW, and then it would pop out the text that says MacBreak Weekly is up across feeds in YouTube. And then I could just hit enter. So I wanted to make that easier for me when I was, if I was downstairs watching something, and I went ahead and checked the feeds using my phone, I didn't have that keyboard shortcut set up because for multiple reasons. So what I did was I created a shortcut that had a menu. And so I would tap the icon that's called feed check, and up at the top, it would say which show, and there was a selection for the different shows that I produce. I would tap on that and it would basically it would create some text and provide me a share sheet. So then I would tap on the Slack icon and then scroll through and find the proper channel, tap on that, and then I could paste the text into there, hit enter. So it saved me a little bit of time. But what I was curious about and what I asked Rosemary about was, is there some sort of deep linking feature that Slack provides? Because if you go in shortcuts and you try to find the Slack app, there's not a lot of magic happening there. So there's not some integrations. So I thought there's got to be some way where I can have shortcuts open up a link that's like this Slack channel to this, or this Slack account to this Slack channel, and then I can just paste it there. But Rosemary was like, you know what? I think we can make it even easier than doing all of that by making use of Slack's API. So
easy in which way though?
Easy in the
fancier shortcut, but
yeah. So
it turns out
quicker.
We didn't even need to make a shortcut because that's the best part of this. I found one on Routinehub and I checked it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great. The community is. I love that.
Yeah. Fortunately, the shortcuts community is pretty good and pretty great at producing a bunch of different things. So I went digging and I looked, and I was pretty certain I remembered seeing something on Routinehub. That's routinehub.co. They've got lots of great shortcuts there as examples that you can download from various creators. And one of the ones that I found was a Slack shortcut. So of course I read through it to make sure that it's not actually secretly sending Mikah's API key off to somewhere else, and then said, go ahead and try this one out. And then Mikah, you managed to report back with some pretty great news. Yes.
So, and Anthony, I posted a link in the sheet so that you can go to Routinehub if you want to. But so Rosemary checked it and made sure that it was not doing anything nefarious. And basically it's complicated in its setup because I basically need to create my own app with Slack. But the creator of this Send to Slack feature has a great walkthrough that tells you exactly how to do it, like what process to follow. And so I had to generate my own kind of API key and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit complicated, but now because of this, I did what you mentioned earlier, Matthew, the sort of referencing another shortcut. So my original shortcut that popped up that menu, I had it create, the text, whatever it happened to be. And then I just referenced the send to Slack shortcut there. And so at the end, it sends this to Slack, and I've got the specific channel already connected via the API. So now all I do is I tap that icon that says, run feed check. It says which show. I tap the show, and then immediately in the specific channel on Slack, up pops the text that I needed.
That's cool.
So now it's two
Does
taps.
it send it to, or do you have to press send at that point?
It sends it itself. Like it's all
cool.
automatic. Yeah. So all I have to do is press the icon to run it, and then press which show, and then I'm done. Because I'm always skeptical, will also then go into Slack and make sure that the message was sent. But every time that I've done it so far, it's been sent. So yeah, this was amazing. It was very easy. Ultimately, it was very easy to set up. It just took a little work, and I did need the Mac to do it. But I loved that. Now, you posted in the Discord with a link. Where did you generate that code that comes at the end there?
That is through, so I shared a URL scheme to these, like how the Slack URL scheme works, which is Slack://channel ? Team equals ID, and then your ID in there also. And so I think if you just right click on a channel, you can copy the main URL.
You need to have the
web.
developer mode enabled in Slack for that, I believe, because it doesn't show up for everybody, for every channel, depending on what permissions you've got.
That's fair.
For it. Whereas theoretically, in the case of Slack, somebody else could create an API token for you and give it to you and scope it so that it can only post to certain channels. So you don't even have to do any of that. And then they just tell you, this is your API token. Here's your channel. Done.
Yeah. And part of the reason I haven't shared my Slack shortcuts is because I didn't have like a great solution for this. I think if you're on Slack on the web, you can see in the URL the consistent team ID as when you exchange pages. And then if you're in
that makes sense.
Like channels have their own ID versus if you DM somebody, it's a different URL. But the only reason I share that was because my solution a lot of times for shortcuts, it's like I could go into an API and have it do it, but I don't know how to use that API, or I'm just like the part about getting to this actual solution is what I would do most of the time is just take me there and then I can paste it in. And even though that's totally like your idea, your method is so much cooler and fun because it actually does it for you. If you can't get to that point, I'm a huge fan of the 80-20 rule of shortcuts is you can get 80% of the value by just putting you in the right spot. And then I can just press paste and send the message. And I don't have to learn APIs to do that. But at the same time, that last 20% can still provide a ton of value, except that it usually takes 80% of the time is how it works, is you spend your time figuring out the API.
And that's what I really recommend
by the way.
people look at your catalog for, Routinehub, the shortcut subreddit, things like that. There is a very good chance that the problem that you're trying to solve has already been solved or 80% solved by somebody else. And so you can take that and just do the 20% of the work, which is, of course, what we really want to do, because we don't want to waste lots and lots of time creating fabulous things that we don't use all that frequently. But for something like this for Mikah and for the TWiT team as well, I think it's a pretty useful feature to be able to send, pre-formatted messages to certain channels when you've done a thing. Next step, Mikah, is amping it up a little bit so that first of all, you run a shortcut and it asks you which show you're checking, and then it opens all the different things in sequence for you to check and to make sure that everything's okay.
Honestly, that is what I was noodling on that, trying to figure out if there's a way that I can, because I've got a direct link to the MP3 or whatever file it happens to be in the different place. So if I could even have it go to that place, grab the first 30 seconds of that file and present it to me so that I could just hit play, and hear them one after the other. Yeah, I've started noodling on that now. I feel so
material
powerful.
Entirely. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. You could. If you just did a get contents the URL on the MP3 link, it should download. I don't know about trimming the media file that
you
quickly.
can trim media files in shortcuts. That's something that you can do.
But you'd have to physically do it. There could be an API too that could scrape just the first 30 seconds or something. That's a cool opportunity. That's the exact kind of thing that I would want to do as well. And is one of those things where there just like isn't the perfect tool that can do that trimming part. But this is also like, I think we now exist in a world where somebody should make that app, because every single video editor and podcast person would use that kind of tool. Like, I mean, maybe it could be automated through Apple's Motion app or like Compressor or something too. And this is where just being on the Mac is there's just a whole new world of apps, and especially pro apps that you can do this stuff with. And it's just like nobody's thought about to do it yet with shortcuts. And so like we could figure that out, and that could be a really solid solution. Especially, yeah, it's like, here's your 4 30-second previews. Just listen to those. I was even, when you were talking about it in my brain, I was like, I can pull the RSS feed. I can pull just the YouTube channel, scrape out the RSS link, grab the items from the RSS feed, and then append 30 seconds to the end of the video URL so that you start out 30 seconds into the video and you know exactly where you are.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, with YouTube, that's a little bit easier. All right, folks. I can hear the music. It is telling us we need to move into Shortcuts Corner. Welcome to Shortcuts Corner. This is the part of the show where you write in with your shortcuts requests, and Rosemary Orchard, the shortcuts expert, provides a solution, or at the very least, hey, that's a great question. We're going to learn more and try to get this solved. The first one comes in from Greg. Greg writes in, "Hi, folks. I am a longtime fan. I've recently added a dual SIM to my iPhone 12 Pro, one for work, one for personal. What I'm trying to do is have my work line incoming calls diverted to another number, for example, my office, to pick up when I am away. Examples would be when I'm on holiday or the weekend, etc., with all other calls coming through to my personal line. Is there a way to set up a shortcut that I can simply switch on the divert ability, or any such way I can implement this? Ideally, I would then love to be able to incorporate this into focus modes as well. Thanking you in advance, Greg from Sydney, Australia." Oh, this one's interesting because we're working with dual SIMs now. This is one of those newer features for the iPhone. And so with that, I imagine there's not as much support to work out the magic here, but maybe you've got an idea?
Well, it really depends. And honestly, a chunk of this, Greg, is going to depend on the carrier that you're using, unfortunately, for your work provider specifically. I've just made an assumption because I know one telecoms provider in Australia. So I've just looked at the Telstra website, and they do appear to have some pretty decent support for call forwarding, where you can just open the phone app, type in a code, followed by the number, and then type in the rest of the code, and that's it. And the number is not the phone number that you're forwarding to. It's saying what kind of call diversion you want. And so I've taken a few different attempts at this, because what I tried to do was just have shortcuts input that into the phone automatically. And that seemed like a great idea. I did it in contacts, tapped on the contact. It worked perfectly. And then I tried to do it from shortcuts, and shortcuts said, "This isn't a phone number. What are you trying to do to me?" And that was kind of, unfortunately, the end of that. And so what I've got two potential versions using this sort of thing. And it looks to me like, depending on what carrier you're with around the world, there's usually some sort of option for this. Now, I should note, the number that I've got here, *#06#, this is not a call forwarding number. This gets like your device IMEI and stuff like that. So I'm not actually going to execute the full thing, but what this does is it copies the text to forward your calls to your clipboard, and then it opens the phone app. So if I run this, then it opens the phone app. I was already on the keypad, and then I can just tap up here into the space above the number pad, hit paste, and then I can call. And if I call, then it will actually execute the command. It doesn't actually make a phone call. Now, of course, assuming that you can do this, this would enable call forwarding, but it wouldn't disable it. So I amped it up. I've got a little dictionary here, so you can choose between on and off. And so if I selected off, then ta-da, it does the same thing as it did before. And so this is probably the solution I would go with. But there is one further option, which is if your carrier doesn't support call forwarding like this, if they've got text message solutions where you can just text them to forward a number, then that's really easy. We can definitely help out with that. But the other option is to open settings. And so there's a URL, just like Matthew talked about with Slack just now, to open the preferences on your phone to the phone app, so that we can go straight into here. And then what you can do is you can tap on call forwarding, and then you could turn on call forwarding from here. Now, if you've got two SIMs in your phone, you're going to want to make sure you set this up correctly so it doesn't forward all of your calls, just your work calls. But from previous experience, when I had two SIM cards in my phone, that was something that I was able to do, which is pretty handy. So fingers crossed, Greg, that one of these is a solution for you. And I look forward to hearing whether or not that works, because, it would be good to find out from different people whether or not this actually works. I'm guessing at how Australian telecoms providers work, and hoping that they all do the same thing as Telstra, which is probably incorrect, unfortunately.
Rosemary, I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
That page only exists when you have call forwarding enabled, right?
As a feature with your carrier. Well,
I'm curious if you tried to make that URL and path equals call forwarding.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did try. Unfortunately, I spent a good 15 minutes trying to find the correct path. Unfortunately, settings on iPhone just don't have deep links. It's the same actually on the Mac. Certain system preferences panes and tabs can be opened with the URL. Some of them can't. And so unfortunately, the best we can do is to get you into the phone. And sometimes you may find in a future version of iOS, a path for call forwarding works. And sometimes you may find it doesn't. And we'll just have to wait and see with each version of iOS. But the phone one has worked consistently for a few years now.
Totally. On the Mac, in case you didn't know, you can go in and look at the dot preference pane file and open that file in order to access those pages. And if anybody wants any of these, don't worry about it, because I have shortcuts coming for every single settings page on iOS that's available. Or not every single one. Some of them I was like, okay, I don't need to do every part of screen time. But I went through and made cross-platform shortcuts. One that opens the page on the Mac, and then if it's run on an iOS, it'll open that page too. And I'll have to release those soon now that I've told people about it.
Yes, you will.
Yep, there you go.
Show notes when you do.
That's why people come on shows, so that they have to sort of hold themselves to this. All right, this next one comes from Tobi. Tobi writes in, "Hi, Rosemary and Mikah and Matthew. I am a regular listener and a big fan of your podcast. Thanks so much. I am quite new in the Apple ecosystem and HomeKit. For some information, I have a HomePod mini as the HomeKit hub running the latest software version and an iPhone 12 running the latest iOS. I have the following question about HomeKit automation. When I set up a home automation, I am able to select a HomeKit sensor as the trigger for the automation. For example, if the humidity in a room gets higher than 60%. But in that home automation, I can only do actions with the HomeKit devices, not with my phone, like showing a notification on my phone or creating a reminder. When I set up a personal automation in the Shortcuts app, I am able to do actions with my phone, like notifications and setting reminders, but this kind of automation cannot be triggered via a HomeKit sensor. So how can I create an automation which is triggered automatically when a HomeKit sensor has a certain value, and then do something on my phone, like notification and creating a reminder? And then Tobi provides a concrete example. When the humidity in the bathroom goes higher than 60%, show a notification on my iPhone and create a reminder to open the window in 10 minutes. I am looking forward to hearing your suggestions for this issue. Thanks a lot, and greetings from Germany. Tobi. Thank you, Tobi. Yes, I remember lamenting about this in the past and then getting the answer that I needed. Rosemary, what is the answer that we need?
Well, there's a whole host of different solutions depending on what you want. You could look into Homebridge and setting things up with a webhook sensor there, so that when something happens, you turn on a Homebridge switch, which actually, sends an email to you or talks to something like Pushover or things like that. But the solution that I'm going to suggest for this is actually a great app called PushCut on iPhone and iPad. And what it does is it gives you the ability to send notifications at various times. And its original creation was all behind the idea that you might not want the same scene to consistently trigger at sunset. You might actually want to be asked at sunset which scene it is that you want to happen. So what you do here is you create notifications. I've already created one, so I'm just going to tap on the home automation. And then this is a URL. So this alone doesn't do anything. But if I copy the URL, then what I can do is inside of the home app, and I'll just pop into here, I can create an automation. And what I can do is I'll just do it for when people arrive right now, because it doesn't matter too much what the trigger is. What we need to do is show you what to do. So we get to this scene, when whatever it is to trigger my automation happens, and we scroll down and we tap convert to shortcut. We delete this action, and then we can run get contents of URL. Now, you might be thinking, this doesn't add a reminder. No, it doesn't, but it does send us a notification. So what I'll do is I'll just paste this here, and I've put a link that we can include in the show notes to show you all of the different options that you can add. But if I do a post, then I can add some options to add, for example, the title and description and everything. And then what will happen when this happens, I'll just quickly disable my podcasting focus mode so that I can show you. Then I actually got a little notification here. See, home automation. This shouldn't be empty because I need to actually fill in the data. Now, assuming I filled in the data, then what happens is when this runs, it gets the contents of this URL, which causes the PushCut servers to go, oh, cool, let's send her a notification. Now, what you can do behind the scenes in PushCut, for example, is you can add actions. So when you then tap on this, then it can actually do things like add the reminder for you, or you can get really nerdy and get something like this. So this is a spare iPhone that I have. And I know not everybody has a spare iPhone, but maybe there's an older iPad running around in your family or something. And this just has a black screen. It says automation server. If I tap on it, then actually it's an automation server for PushCut. So it sits here all day doing things for me. So for example, it will send messages that are delayed. So if I want to send somebody a message at 4:30 and I remember at 10 o'clock in the morning, then I can queue it up, and after 4:30, that message will be sent, and other things. But it could also add that reminder for you. Now, of course, that side of it is potentially a bit overkill, but we can certainly solve the notification problem for you, Tobi. So fingers crossed that gives you a good place to get started.
Okay, I have some questions as
Of course you do.
someone who loves PushCut and hasn't done this enough, because again, the scale thing I think is where I needed to figure out my actual set first before I can do some of this automation. I totally, as we were saying this, like I want to request from PushCut just a time parameter, because if this is all triggered from PushCut's servers, in theory, we could, even when a webhook is hit, you could still pass in a time value and it could wait 10 minutes and then just send it for you.
Yes. So
but it's not built into this at all right now, but it feels like this is something they should add, because it seems like a pretty common thing to, if you could just get the PushCut notification 10 minutes later, that could be the reminder that your window was open and you should close it.
Yes. Yeah. So I did actually talk to the folks at PushCut about this. Simon, one of the original creators, and I've talked to some of the other developers there as well about this, because what they're aware of is the ability to lose data. And basically, if they're holding on to things for, say, 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 weeks, then first of all, you might forget that you've queued that thing up and go, what the heck is this? Why is this coming now? And secondly, there's always the possibility that, something disappears in that time frame. And so their suggestion for things like this is, instead of queuing up a notification to send later, that you use the PushCut server, which of course is unfortunately an extra subscription, though there is a one-time in-app purchase for that. And then you queue that up. And so that this then handles the in 10 minutes, send me the notification to do this part, which I have to say, I do that for a whole bunch of things and it works very well. And I quite like the fact that it's under my control then, instead of me potentially needing to go log into a server to see a queue of things that are queued up for the future, or especially if I've got an automation that's gone awry, I might have 50, 60 different things in there and having to clear those out, which would not be great.
Totally.
So their suggestion was that you take that into your own control and do something so that things get queued up for later or whatever it is on your end. But I can see why people would want that feature. And of course, if you want that feature, you should ask the creators of PushCut if they'll add it for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good reason. I think it's just fair too that part of it is that just with home automations in general, they don't run on your phone at all. They're running on the HomePod. And so that's like why there's this split in personal automations versus home automations and the functionality. It's like anything in the home automations, they are all just functions that Apple can make and without actually using any sort of app. So like calling the weather data or making URL requests are just things that they're basically just making their own API requests from your device. And so that's where there's not this overlap of your HomePod can't like open your phone and run something. And even what we were saying before about executing stuff in the background from the Mac, bringing that to iOS could enable personal and home automations to become there's like no difference between them, and you could run things on your different devices. And that would be very, very cool. Like this is a huge downside of shortcuts right now is that people want HomeKit things to trigger actions in the Shortcuts app. And to be fair, there also is, I can't even remember it off the top of my head right now, the home signals for HomeKit on the Mac can, if you have a always on Mac, can act as a server that monitors for HomeKit triggers and then kicks off real shortcuts on the Mac and sets a reminder for 10 minutes from now. So like if you did have a Mac Mini, you could technically do some of these things now, but it's, again, you're like trying to execute iOS stuff from a Mac and HomeKit. So you're like, this is now this other different daisy chain of devices, but that is possible.
Yeah, it's complex. And I suspect one of the reasons why Apple's not looked into this all that much is because, somebody else opens a window and you're not even at home and you get a notification, say the window's open. Does everybody in the home get the notification? Do just you get that notification? It's complex. It's a bit of a can of worms. I think they'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I think, the same. They just take time to do it right and not a way that would create huge issues. And there's like legitimate security reasons for all of this stuff. So I think that's something that's like, we of course want it to work right away, but they don't just want your like mom to set it up and then she's suddenly getting all the like HomeKit reminders constantly, no matter what temperature it is, and has no idea how to turn it off or something. So
exactly. Yes.
All righty, folks. We need to head into the end of the show. So coming up will be our app caps after this ad break. So if Matthew hasn't gotten an app cap yet, now's the time for him to do that. While I tell you about Wealthfront, who are bringing you this episode of iOS Today. Stock trading, it can be a wild ride, but the thrill of risking it all is best enjoyed in moderation, like everything, including casino gambling and eating questionable food. If you're playing the market, I hope for your sake that you're stashing some safer money in a place like Wealthfront. You might think that day trading stocks is the secret to investing success, but Wealthfront has a ton of data to show that time in the market almost always beats timing in the market. Their globally diversified portfolios automatically optimize to hit the goals you set and the risk level you choose, and also to get you automatic tax breaks that can boost your returns even when the market dips. Yeah, it's called tax loss harvesting, and they actually invented the software. You can look it up. You can also personalize your portfolio with a selection of funds handpicked by Wealthfront's financial experts. Categories include social responsibility, clean energy, and yes, even cryptocurrency. Wealthfront is trusted with more than $27 billion with a B dollars in assets, helping nearly 500,000 people build their wealth. And Investopedia just named them their best robo-advisor for 2022. And when you consider that, that's pretty amazing since the year isn't even halfway over. To start building your wealth and get your first $5,000 managed for free for life, go to wealthfront.com/iOS today. That's wealthfront.com/iOS today to start building your wealth. Go to wealthfront.com/iOS wealthfront.com/iOS today and get started today. Thanks so much to Wealthfront for sponsoring this week's episode of iOS Today. It's time for App Caps. Alrighty, folks, this is the part of the show where we place caps atop our heads to honor our app caps. These are the apps or gadgets we are using now that we want to share with all of you, or maybe it's cat apps that we've been using for a long time that we think that you should check out. Up first, we will go to Rosemary Orchard to tell us about the cap atop her head and then tell us about her app cap.
It's red, it's white, it's stripy, it's got a white brim. There's also a little red bow tie and some white gloves. I am today the cat in the hat, which is very appropriate because apparently I spend quite a bit of time sleeping, which is one of the things that I've been tracking with the Oura Ring. So I know a lot of people have, tried out the Apple Watch and they find a smartwatch is not right for them. They don't like the notifications that they get. They don't like the distraction of the display. They don't like the fact that everybody can kind of tell that they've got a smartwatch on. And the Oura Ring is an alternative solution to the ability to track data without the parts of the Apple Watch that maybe people don't enjoy, or Fitbit or similar, because, they all work in a very similar way. And the Oura is a ring. It comes in a couple of different colors and so on. And then it gives you a whole bunch of different data. So you can see, for example, your activity goal progress. I've not done lots of working out today, but I am going to go to a ballet class in a little bit. I can see my heart rate tracked over various times. I can see whether or not I'm ready for the day and so on. And there's other integrations as well. I should note that I've got 63% battery, which is not bad. And the battery charger is adorable. It's this little circle, and you just pop the ring off, which is a little difficult to do live on camera, of course. And then you pop it on the ring and it charges wirelessly and immediately updates to show that it's charging. That works pretty well. But I have to say, I'm impressed with the Oura Ring. So the app, of course, is free, but the Oura Ring is $299. But to start with, you don't get a ring. You get lots of rings. You get, I believe it's 8 plastic rings. And the idea is that you try them out for size to see which one fits you the most comfortably, along with the parameters. And the idea is you wear it for 24 hours to make sure that you go through all of the different temperatures and everything that you might have whilst wearing a ring, so that you actually can decide whether or not it fits. And I'm just going to pull out the biggest one to just quickly show people, because it's a little difficult on my actual ring to see that there are some little bumps inside, and these are the sensors. So I'll hold up my actual ring next to it, just for comparison. But the outside of the ring is silver. This is heritage silver. And then the inside it's a lovely clear, and there's like chipboards and everything in there with the little sensors. This was a pretty great device. I'm really pleased with it. I believe they did actually sponsor the show back with the first generation version. But I'm very pleased with how comfortable this is and how easy it is to track things. And also the battery life. I've not charged this since Friday and it's at 63%. That's pretty great going.
Wow.
So if you're looking for a way to track some data, but you don't necessarily feel that you need all the data that you could get from the Apple Watch, and you certainly don't want the notifications, then I would recommend checking out the Oura Ring. The sizing kit does come for free after you've paid for the watch, and then once you picked it, you select it. And I have to say, they told me it would be a couple of weeks after I selected my size before the actual ring arrived, and it arrived 3 days later. So I'm very impressed that they can do that. Their logistics seem to be pretty great, and they offer a bunch of different colors and everything. They also offer a subscription in their app where you can do meditation and more, and all of the data syncs to Apple HealthKit, which means, of course, all of your data can be centrally stored in one place, making it really easy for you to do, for you to keep an eye on.
I keep meaning to get one of these. I just need to go ahead and make it happen, because a lot of folks I know who like to do the quantified self are big fans of the Oura Ring, and I totally now that it's in its third generation, I think it's well worth taking a look at it. The body temperature features more than anything else, I think, because that's one thing the Apple Watch does not currently do. And it's always nice to have comparisons of data to see how different things are tracking you differently. All right. Next is Matthew Cassinelli. Tell us about the cap atop your head, and then tell us about your app cap.
This hat that I have is my favorite hat that I lost a couple years ago for years on end, and then found it one day. I like wore it, and it's in my profile picture, which is like a film photo from Hawaii. And I was like, this is great. And then I got home from the trip and was like, where the heck is my hat? And I couldn't find it for so long. But the reason I wanted to share it is because I want to scan the symbol in the hat using the laundry scan app. Here, I'm going to have to take off my hat real quick. And forgive me if my hair just got messed up. But basically, I have this app called Laundry Scan, which of course has a shortcut. But here, wait, I guess that's the only interface, is just a scanning capability. But the shortcut just opens this camera too to make it easy. But you basically can go in and scan the symbols. And it'll tell you like, oh, you need to machine wash it. The camera isn't focusing. I was having trouble with this a second ago, but it's basically
it might be
just
because it's connected to eCam. It occasionally causes the camera to go slightly out of focus, I found, which is very frustrating.
That's probably what it is. It did it a second ago, but it was like machine wash at
there we go,
up to 86 degrees and stuff like that. And so it's just like a cool little, it's like it's basically like nobody knows what the heck those actually mean. And it's obviously just a symbol that it can scan and just let you know. So I guess this works better when it's not plugged. Of course, every time you try to demo it, it doesn't work. But, but that was mine.
Well, yeah. So that's a laundry lens, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Or laundry. Yeah, that's it.
Laundry lens. All right, cool. And that is available for free in the App Store, which is quite nice. Last but not least is I'm wearing a straw hat atop my head. You can tell it was in a box, and so it's very bent. Normally this brim should be pretty flat, but alas, that is not the case. The app that I want to talk about is a new app called Momently. It's available for $1.99 in the App Store. And this is an app for keeping track of memories based on events that you go to or things that you do. And what I like about it is that it's a very private app. It's not connected to a bunch of weird online services that are taking your photos and putting them in all these different places. It's a very simple, but I think clean and neat way to keep track of memories. So a concert that I went to, Alt J, Portugal the Man, and Cherry Glazer, I posted some of the photos into this just so that I could swipe into it. There's the jacket that I wore. And then us at the concert, that kind of thing. And if you tap into the event, wait, is this to let you? Yeah. Oh, there we go. Then you can see the photos, but all of the information. So for example, I recently hung out with a couple of my friends. The guy in the middle is the creator of the co-founder and co-creator of Pocket Casts, which is the podcast app that we love here at TWiT. And the gal on the left is Yasmin Evian, who used to do a show about Google, but then ended up working at Google. And so we hung out in San Francisco, and you can see it's got kind of like the location where we were, a little bit of information about this meeting. You can pop in your contacts so that you can add them. These are the people that you went with to this moment. And then on April 25th was when I set up Momently. So I just took a couple of photos of things, and like this avocado here and the plant, and just because those were things that were nearby while I was setting this up. And so you've got the option, I can tap on the pencil to create a new moment. You can add a title. So recording iOS today, for example. And then here I would type in what I was doing, but then I could add Rosemary Orchard. If I can spell, that's helpful. Rose, and then tap add. And then I could add Matthew, and I don't have a nickname for Matthew, so that's just Matthew. And then tap done. And then those folks are in there. I could add a location. If you go on a trip, you can also add a trip and give a summary of a trip and sort of summarize it with a photo. So it's just a very simple way to keep track of different memories that you've had. And then as you add memories, you'll see that there's the On This Day tab. And so you will be able to go back and see memories from before. So no machine learning, no AI, no ads, none of that. It's a very simple timeline-based moment tracker that you can use to keep everything there. As it says, make every moment count. And they're really focused on the privacy aspect. It's a private journal for you to keep track of different things that you've done in the past and the friends that you've hung out with along the way. $1.99, very inexpensive and easy to sync across different devices using the iCloud syncing features. All of those apps are available in the App Store. And with that, we have reached the end of this episode of iOS Today. If you have questions, feedback, Shortcuts Corner requests, you send those to iostoday@twit.tv. We'll answer some more of those next week, including somebody who wrote in and also included some audio. So that's exciting. Get your questions in again, iostoday@twit.tv. You can tune in live to watch us record the show every Tuesday. We record at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. You can do that by going to twit.tv/live, or we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on all the different places where you can stream live. But we think the best way to get the show is by subscribing to it, which you do by going to twit.tv/iOS. There you'll find a page where you can subscribe in different places, including Pocket Casts, as I mentioned earlier. In the audio and video versions of the feed, we think the video version is a lot of fun because you can see our funny caps and all that kind of stuff, but we do our best to describe things as we are going along so that the audio version is just as valuable. And I should mention, too, that if you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, we've got a way to do that. You can check out Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. For $7 a month, you get every single one of Twit's shows ad-free. You get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, including an interview this Thursday that I'm doing with editor John Ashley here at Twit. You get outtakes, behind the scenes stuff, all sorts of fun stuff gets popped in there. And then access to the members only Discord server. That's a place where you can hang out with your fellow Club Twit members. And also those of us here at Twit. Rosemary Orchard is super active in the Club Twit Discord. If all of that sounds good to you, well, we would love it if you would support us directly, $7 a month, twit.tv/clubtwit to check it out. And we now also have an annual plan available. So if you're all in and you just kind of you don't want to have to think about the $7 coming out every month, well, you can join for a year's long plan as well. Super easy to do. Let's start with Matthew Cassinelli. If folks want to follow you online, check out all your great work, where do they go to do so?
The best place is matthewcassinelli.com/Siri-shortcuts and then /newsletter, where I'm relaunching my What's New in Shortcuts newsletter that I took a short break to finish out my catalog. But otherwise, I'm also on Twitter and I'm doing YouTube videos again about shortcuts soon.
Awesome. And Rosemary Orchard, what about you?
You can find me at rosemaryorchard.com, which has links to all the things I do online. As Mikah mentioned, I'm also in the Club Twit Discord, and I do try and keep an eye on the IRC during the show as well. Other than that, you can find me on social media generally with the username Rosemary Orchard, such as micro.blog and Twitter. I tend to lurk around the internet. What about you, Mikah?
I can be found at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. I think that takes care of it. That has all the links that you need. Until next time, thank you so much for being here, Matthew Cassinelli. Thank you all out there for tuning in to watch this very special episode of iOS Today. We will be back next week with more. And until then, we say goodbye.
The world is changing rapidly. So rapidly, in fact, that it's hard to keep up. That's why Mikah Sargent and I, Jason Howell, talk with the people making and breaking the tech news on Tech News Weekly every Thursday. They know these stories better than anyone, so why not get them to talk about it in their own words? Subscribe to Tech News Weekly and you won't miss a beat every Thursday at twit.tv.